I think that the only way this country moves forward into a better world is when conservatives can finally realize that they need to turn the temperature down on their side. We are 10 years into whatever this Trump madness is, and there is not a single mainstream conservative that will call for a lowering of the temperature on their side. I think that liberals need to wake up and finally realize that if they're not willing to do it, it will never come down. If you wanted Charlie Kirk to be alive, Donald Trump shouldn't have been president for the second term.
So that is definitely one of the worst takes so far in the under a week since Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at a Utah university. And honestly, genuinely, I truly hope that Steven decides that he wants to rephrase that or at least walk that back a little bit, because what he said right there, and I was going to say it sounds like what he said right there, but what he said right there and what it sounds like he means right there is that if you don't want political violence, if you don't want figures like Charlie Kirk getting assassinated for speaking, then you shouldn't have voted in a way that I disagree with. You shouldn't have voted for the evil orange man, which, by the way, is among one of the most extreme sentiments that is being expressed by the far left, and Destiny doesn't even consider himself aligned with that wing of the far left.
Every time he's in office, this happens. People joked about when Biden came in, it was so boring, nothing was going on. 7 out of 10 of the largest protests in American history have happened under Donald Trump.
I mean, again, the idea that if you vote differently, if the election outcome is not Steven's preference, then therefore your figures deserve to die is a crazy statement. It's objectively absurd. And by the way, I will also point out that this quite literally is something that we've brought up on this channel a couple of times because it was tweeted by Charlie Kirk post the Luigi Mangione reaction back in April of this year. And I'll read you that, and I want you to really think about Destiny's sentiment as compared to what Charlie Kirk predicted was percolating on the left. Assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% say the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left has been whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election, focus on that losing an election, or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. This is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. It's hard to not draw the parallel with that sentiment expressed by Kirk and Steven saying if you wanted Charlie Kirk to be alive, you shouldn't have elected Donald Trump, aka a setback electorally for the left. And it's really unfortunate because a lot of the Destiny fanboys, in response to my Twitter reaction to these clips, have been sending me a clip of him saying that he wants the shooter of Charlie Kirk to be executed. Let me play that for you right here.
Also, just because they're having a lot of jokes and memes, just so that I'm absolutely clear, I hope they find this dude, and I hope they hang this guy. It is absolutely unacceptable to be out and about assassinating people, okay? That's wild. Same feelings I have about Luigi, I have about this dude. Not acceptable, not okay, not cool, not epic, and not based. Just insane.
So on some level, in a different form, which happens to be his live stream, he is perfectly willing to tell you what he thinks about the shooter and basically make the case that not only is this not justified, but it's worthy of the death penalty. But in other forms, where he's trying to be more performative, like Piers Morgan, he echoes a sentiment expressed by the crazies on the far left. And this is what we're going to talk about today. This whole entire Piers Morgan episode, Ana Kasparian going after Destiny for this, all the things that happen in between. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
I call Trump's administration a neo-fascist movement, you lunatic. You people have gone out
You're
of
absolutely
your way.
right.
You have gone out of your way.
Let me make the
to do
case.
everything
Let me
possible
make
to
the
cultivate
case.
this.
Let me make the case.
Oh, yeah,
Will you
just
allow
made
me to
your
speak,
case.
brother?
You
Come on,
just
man.
made your
Come on.
case.
No, you haven't made the case. If you think I've made the case, then you're not understanding dialogue.
You just said this brother over here said this.
You're very, very
You called
different
him
than brother Charlie, man.
neo-fascist. That's
You're
what
very
called him,
different than Charlie, though, man.
Yeah.
When
Run
Charlie
away.
himself says that he is against Civil Rights Act, does that make him a proponent of Jim Crow? When he calls Martin Luther King Jr. an awful human being and a scumbag? I'm critical of that. I am critical of that. You're absolutely right, Brother Wilson. You're absolutely right. But if all you're going to do is be arrogant, you're arrogant just like the so-called leftists you're talking about. But Piers, you making your money, brother. Go on and make your money, man.
So the reason I decided to show you this clip of Cornel West being all dramatic and storming off the set, accusing Piers Morgan of only being interested in money after Andrew Wilson pressed him on the idea that he labels his political opponents like Donald Trump and the people that support him neo-fascists, is because Stephen was not supposed to be on this panel. This wasn't supposed to be Destiny versus everyone. It was supposed to be Cornel West, Ana Kasparian, Jack Posobiec, who, by the way, I know personally and is also a close friend of Charlie Kirk, or was a close friend of Charlie Kirk, and Andrew Wilson. But Andrew basically gave him a knockout punch by pointing out accurately that yes, Cornel West was calling these people neo-fascists. This, by the way, is what set the stage for Destiny's appearance on this panel. And like I said, his opening sentiment is ridiculous for a number of reasons. Obviously, people are focusing on the, if you wanted Charlie Kirk to be alive, you shouldn't have voted for the evil orange man portion of it, but it's actually the first portion of that sentiment that I want to focus on for just a moment.
I think that the only way this country moves forward into a better world is when conservatives can finally realize that they need to turn the temperature down on their side. We are 10 years into whatever this Trump madness is, and there is not a single mainstream conservative that will call for a lowering of the temperature on their side. I think that liberals need to wake up and finally realize that if they're not willing to do it, it will never come down. If you wanted Charlie Kirk to be alive, Donald Trump shouldn't have been president for the second term.
So this is supposed to be the actual argument being put forward by Stephen, his actual point, which is, according to him, the right keeps ratcheting up the rhetoric, and until such a time where vague figures on the right that will eventually, through this conversation, evolve into President Trump specifically, say that we need to tone down the rhetoric, we need to turn down the temperature, he is going to continue to ratchet it up in response, because something tit for tat, the president's more important than he is, and he thinks that this is a rational way to go in terms of fighting back against the right. And this runs into a number of logical problems. Plus, it sounds absolutely mental if you think turning up the temperature is bad on one side, therefore you're going to do it on the other side in the hopes that they'll learn a lesson of regretting what they asked for, and that will cause them to turn down the temperature. In reality, if everybody keeps going back to the thing that set them off originally, we keep comparing old wounds, what actually ends up happening is that people end up with infinite number of excuses in order to turn up the temperature. You see this all the time, by the way, when we're talking about any kind of violent instances. In fact, one of the things that people are cynically deploying against the right is the assassination of the former Minnesota Speaker of the House and, of course, a state senator. And I've actually talked about this on this channel. I talked about the ridiculous conspiracy theories. I called out, what's his name, the senator from Utah, Mike Lee, for his ridiculous post about Nightmare on Wall Street, which, by the way, he claimed was something that he did because this guy was appointed to some commission by Tim Walz. Therefore, because he's among the thousands of appointments that the governor makes, he was some kind of leftist. But regardless of any of that, even if that were true, which, by the way, it isn't, and I debunked that in the previous video, it doesn't make any sense to comedically post about the assassination of state representatives. But the thing is, I can't control Mike Lee's behavior. I can't control other right-wing figures' behavior. I can't control other left-wing figures' behavior. So while I produce videos on this channel and I call out these ridiculous acts of violence, the conspiracy theories, the joking about said violence, in reality, I can do that because I can only control my behavior, which, by the way, brings me to the exact fundamental flaw in Stephen's logic right here.
Leftists and Democrats have been condemning and turning down the temperature, condemning violence, turning down the temperature for a decade. Donald Trump can't go on TV and say, all of us need to calm down.
Right.
Can you tell me why he cannot?
Why
tell
would you
his
expect
side to calm
anybody,
down?
Destiny?
You
What?
can't answer that. Can you answer that question? Why can't
Can
Trump
you
go on
answer
TV
this
and say,
question?
all of us should be less violent?
Why do you
can't
think?
Trump say that?
Why do you
Why
think?
is your behavior
I feel like
contingent on Donald
I'm
Trump?
insane right now.
Why do you
is
think?
your
No, let me
behavior
ask a
contingent
question.
on Donald Trump?
Let me ask a
Because
question.
he's the president of the United States of America and the leader of the
Yeah,
opposing
Destiny.
political party.
Destiny. Let me
You
just.
have a huge audience of young men who
I'm a
listen to
YouTuber
everything you have to
who
say.
has more
So
young
when
men
you,
following
it
him.
doesn't
Who
matter.
has
You have a
more young-
huge
it doesn't
audience,
matter.
and because
This
of
is
the fact that
world
you have a
I'm
huge
living in,
audience,
and
you
your
have
brain
a
has been
responsibility
broken by
to
online
not turn.
rhetoric.
No,
And
it
your
hasn't.
brain
It
has
hasn't been
been
broken. I actually
destroyed
care
because
about the
people
country
bully you
and
on
want to bring
Twitter.
people together.
If
You do
then
the
you should tell
opposite.
Donald
You
Trump to tell
represent the
people
worst
to
of us,
be
Destiny.
less
You're
violent.
embarrassing.
Wouldn't you know it? Of all people, it's Ana Kasparian, the Armenian Amazon, even though she's actually short, so I have to call her something something opposite of the Amazon. We'll call her the Armenian Nile River, who decides to bring this logic to the forefront and confront Destiny live on Piers Morgan, which by the way was taped and not live, about these particular issues.
The sick thing is weaponizing a widow's grief to try to do recruitment for your political party. That's probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. She's showing up in emails for recruitment drives for TPUSA.
What did you think the assassination of a political figure would do? What did you think the outcome was going to be? What did you think the outcome was? And by the way,
are you asking me for the pragmatic political outcome, or are you asking me for...
Hey, how about take it easy on the Adderall? Take it easy on the Adderall, and let me answer the question that Piers asked me.
You must have been really bullied today.
My behavior is not reliant on how anyone else behaves. Every morning I wake up and I make decisions about how I choose to react or respond to things. I don't wake up in the morning, check what Donald Trump has to say, and then base my own personal behavior on his behavior. I agree with you in that it would be very helpful to have the leader of this country want to turn the temperature down. And he hasn't done that. I agree with you on that. But that doesn't change the way I choose to respond to what's going on. The idea of mocking a woman who is now a widow with 2 young children who witnessed her husband get shot in the neck and bleed out to death. How can you mock that? What is wrong with you? I just don't understand it. That's it. I don't understand it. I don't understand you, Destiny. You have so much hatred in your heart, and at the same time, you judge others as hateful.
If you're going to weaponize somebody's grief against the other party, well, then of course people have a right to fight back against it.
So look, those are good points from Ana Kasparian right there, and the reason I know they're good points is because I said them on Twitter based on a previous clip that I saw. Then I watched the full episode of Piers Morgan, and she essentially said what I said on Twitter, and if I made the point and then she reiterated the point that I made, therefore, by the transitive property, it has to be an excellent point. But I will add a little bit of a caveat, a tiny sprinkle of defense for Steven, who, by the way, is utterly defenseless in 99% of the point that he's trying to make, because again, he's attacking Erica Kirk for posting on social media and trying to continue Turning Point USA, which happens to be Charlie Kirk's life work, again, in under a week after he was brutally assassinated by an absolute monster who was whipped up into a frenzy. By the way, very likely 99% chance, unless some overwhelming evidence comes out to the contrary by left-wing activists who thought Charlie Kirk was a fascist.
Who shot Charlie Kirk?
A guy from Utah who was raised in a Christian family, who was a 22-year-old
white dude. Described.
He wasn't trans. He didn't have
Destiny.
a trans girlfriend. He didn't have any trans influences. He didn't have any trans bullets. Yeah, I'm sorry. You guys were wrong on all of that.
To be clear, the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, has made it clear that their investigation has now established that he had been radicalized by a leftist ideology, which drove him to do this. That's just
I'm sorry. Excuse me. When?
Yesterday, he said that.
No. When was he radicalized? In the 6 months that he did remote college?
I don't know when he was radicalized, but I do know the very reasonable sounding governor of Utah has made it clear that the you may not want to hear this.
An ongoing investigation.
You may not want to hear it, Destiny.
Hey guys, editing Sean here, and I was waiting for official confirmation of what we had been hearing about the shooter's ideology, and it turns out included in the charging document are text messages from the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, and of course the transgender roommate that apparently Tyler Robinson was actually seeing. In fact, in these messages, Tyler Robinson refers to this trans person as my love, and wouldn't you know it, in those messages we actually do have a motivation, and it doesn't sound very right-wing according to the text. In response to why did I do it, Robinson replies, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. That's pretty straightforward left-wing motives. Again, the Groypers would have said he's not hateful enough. In addition to that, we also have Robinson say, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. And by the way, other evidence in the charging document says that this person became obsessed with left-wing politics over the last 2 years, and of course it ratcheted up specifically on LGBT and trans issues because this person was dating a trans. So of course we should see Destiny walk this back, but he won't, because it's just memes, bro. I'm blaming you because one time Republicans blamed this or that, and that's going to be my counter excuse because, you know, you can't ever control your own behavior. You have to base it completely on the behavior of others. But yeah, Destiny's point about Trump being a person who can try to calm down the rhetoric is true. I actually wish Trump was better on this. I know he did say that he wants people to keep it peaceful because that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted.
How do you want to see your supporters respond to this? Charlie Kirk was a big advocate of nonviolence and free speech on campus. How do you want your supporters to respond to it?
I think that way. He was an advocate of nonviolence. That's the way I'd like to see people respond.
And I'm not going to begrudge him for saying that this is a problem on the left. Again, we cite the numbers that Charlie Kirk cited back in April about how many left-wingers are endorsing or think it's sometimes acceptable, to be fair to the language in that particular poll, to assassinate people that disagree with them. However, there was a sentiment expressed by Trump somewhere in the mix of all these different various statements, which, by the way, one of the criticisms of Trump is that his messaging needs to be more direct. And that is, he said something to the effect of right-wing extremists only want the law to be enforced more.
Radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders.
And that's just not the case. It's not true. And while I do think the totality of incidents and, of course, the endorsement of political violence broadly and these kind of tactics and labeling your enemies fascists that are going to get you killed if you let them to speak is almost exclusively a left-wing problem, the idea that there are only people on the right that want the law enforced and that's why they act out in extreme ways, it's just not true. It's not a good thing to say. Again, you have the Buffalo shooting that is often being brought up as an example. This was a guy hopped up on great replacement theory stuff. He actually went to a black supermarket in Buffalo in order to kill black people based on the great replacement theory, which, by the way, is insanely stupid because black people have been in this country for a very long time. So just in terms of the one-to-one ideological to action, the guy was an absolute idiot. And there's no reason to run any kind of cover for this person because he did act out based on, again, concerns about great replacement theory, which, by the way, is something that is pushed by the right wing. And there's no reason we have to cover that up or own that. And by the way, nobody on the right defends somebody like that. In fact, most of the sentiment that was expressed by the right wing post this guy's capture is that New York should have the death penalty for people like this. And I 100% agree to that. So yeah, I don't like the 100% dismissal of anything on your side by President Trump, or at least that's the way it came out in that sentiment. I know that you're going to have other statements where he's saying other things. He's President Trump. So to that extent, I wish Trump had a more consistent message. I wish he didn't talk about his ballroom or whatever the hell he was building so much in relation to Charlie Kirk, because that's what he was doing when he found out about the assassination. But, you know, President Trump is who he is. And still, the idea that you would base your actions, your motivations and whatnot, and what you put out into the world on him is a bit absurd. It's insane, especially if you hate this guy. At one point in time, Anna said he has the worst case of Trump derangement syndrome.
I have all sorts of disagreements with the right. That doesn't mean I'm going to dehumanize them and cheer on the slaughter of my fellow Americans because we have disagreements on politics. You're embarrassing.
I wish anybody here had the same energy for the president of the United States, but that's good. I'm glad you guys are focused where it really counts on Twitter. And
dude,
YouTube,
you have
the
like
conservatives want you to be
TDS,
focused
like
on, you know?
you are like the prototype
TDS,
of TDS.
yeah, there it
it's
comes.
unbelievable.
The TDS,
you wake up
yes.
every morning and you decide your
Yes,
behavior is going to
true.
hinge on Trump.
Tell me more about the dancing
Israelis
Israelis and Building
God, have
7
a little bit
and
of
how the
humanity.
Jews-
Trump bad. Trump bad.
And I'm 100% in agreement with that. Again, Steven, you can only control your actions, just like I control my actions. But that's a reality that Steven does not seem willing to address, willing to confront, willing to encounter. And it genuinely makes me sad that he isn't willing to do so.
She's the one who gave a 17-minute speech on TV where she talked about good versus evil. She's the one showing up in
Destiny,
TPUSA ads to 1 or 2 days after.
If someone assassinated my husband, I would not be able to have the level of composure she had during that speech, I would be out for blood. I understand why she's angry and why she said the things that she said. Okay, you need to understand what being a human is, what it's like to actually lose someone that you love, that you chose to spend your life with, that you chose to raise children with, a person who was violently and viciously assassinated like that.
Now, Ana also expresses a very human sentiment right there, where she talks about if this were her husband, how she would react, and how it's ridiculous for you to be grading the grief of Charlie Kirk's wife, again, immediately after. And by the way, I've seen a lot of people post about this, about how, oh, she's just as angry and hateful as her husband. And people on the right are making fun of these people because they're like, oh yeah, that woman is really upset. I wonder if she has a reason to be upset. I wonder if something traumatic happened to her that is forever going to change the course of her life and the lives of her children, that might possibly explain, you know, the sentiment that she's expressing in this particular video. And Ana clearly and obviously gets that. This is a very human moment from Ana Kasparian. And it also goes a step further than that, because every single person on this panel, and by the way, I'll include myself who's not on this panel, will do live events from time to time. And whenever you do these live events, especially these ones with lax security, which by the way, I've been to events with Jack Posobiec, Andrew Wilson, and Steven, not all at the same event, where there is very much lax security. This kind of thing is always in the back of your head, that somebody in the crowd might lash out against you or one of the other panelists, and then you might lose your life. So this is something that we should all be able to kind of sympathize with in terms of Charlie Kirk, in terms of his family and whatnot. And also, we all understand that the people who are going to make the internet intolerable if something like that does happen are almost exclusively on the left. And by the way, Steven can deny this all he wants, but in reality, every single person on this panel knows 100% if the worst case scenario happens to them, the people that will attack them the most viciously will be the people on the far left. They'll attack Steven for all the reasons they're currently attacking him right now, saying that he's a pro-Israel Zionist and all this other stuff. They'll attack Ana for selling out to the right and all the things that they lay on her. They'll call her a bigot and all that and say that she deserved it. And in reality, you shouldn't have to tell your family, you shouldn't have to tell your friends that if something bad were to happen to you, then they should probably get off the internet for like, you know, a year, so that way they don't have to confront all these different various people that are going to be celebrating this and sharing, if there is video, gruesome video of your demise. Steven should get that, everybody on this panel should get that, and yet that is not what we see right here from him. We do see it from Ana, and again, this is something that she actually ended up still having an emotional reaction to at the start of the Young Turks show that very day, and I'll play a little bit of that for you so you can see that as well.
Before we get started, how are you doing?
Don't ask me that because not good, but let's just move on. I'm just really sad at like where the country is right now. You know, I was just talking to our producer, Kate, about it. And I'm worried. I'm like worried about the future of the country. I'm worried about what's happening in the Middle East. Obviously, I've been worried about that. And, you know, I'm doing my best to keep it together. I want to get the news to our audience. But what I hope to do, guys, through the work that we do here at TYT is to try to make things better, try to get people in this country to see each other as human beings before a political identity or a political label. The fact that anyone on the left right now is celebrating the murder of someone they disagree with really breaks my heart, because I thought the left would be better than that. And I think the majority of the left, you know, people that we don't hear from, have been good on this issue, and they do not celebrate the murder of someone that they disagree with politically. But it does break my heart that some of the most prominent streamers, content creators have been putting out some stuff out that I don't know where I belong. And that's another thing. Like, all of this is just kind of doubling down on how homeless I feel politically. And that's a really difficult place to be, because you have nothing to root for. You have, I don't know. There's no figure or there's no political party I can look to right now and feel inspired by. And that's really hard to do. or a hard place to be in. So that's how I'm doing, Cenk. I didn't expect you to ask me that question, so sorry for the whole spiel.
Look, I 100% get that reaction. Again, I talked about how I'll sometimes go on social media, I'll refresh my feed, and I'll get angrier, and then I'll do it again. Get even angrier, do it again, get even angrier. And then I think to myself, I'm going to tweet something absolutely awful. I'm going to really go after these people while I'm at the height of my anger, while I'm at the height of my disgust with this whole situation. But I think to myself, you know what? It's good to call out people who do bad things. It's good to call out evil, but there's no need to antagonize any further. Again, Charlie Kirk was all about engaging these people. He would definitely call them out for the evil that they actually are, but he would engage them on the battlefield of ideas. And the idea that we are going to take his death and turn it into something where it's going to be a call for censorship. Again, you have the Attorney General talking about hate speech. Ridiculous, by the way. She should resign. She said it twice. That's good enough for me. 2 strikes, you're out when you mention hate speech and you're a Republican. But yeah, this is not a good sentiment. And yes, we should think about what Charlie Kirk would do in those situations, even when we're extremely angry or we have Destiny intentionally trying to inflame us with all this crazy stuff. I mean, there was a point where Jack Posobiec was talking about how Charlie Kirk's kids are eventually going to grow up and watch this. And Destiny went off on how sanctimonious and ridiculous it was.
It's very angry, Piers, you know, and here's the thing is she's seeing all of it. She's going to see all of it. Her kids are going to watch this video one day. It's just, that's sort of the nature of reality now. They will see all of this and they will see the reaction. And I just hope that those of us who knew Charlie, worked with Charlie, who knew Charlie beyond the, you know, TikToks and short videos can also be there for those kids as they grow up, to let them know who their dad was.
And kids are going to grow up and watch old episodes of Piers Morgan uncensored. How performative is this? Is everybody here? Did we all get like a script before the show? What?
They watch a lot of old episodes of the JFK.
You make the left look so bad, and you don't even realize it. You are seriously so embarrassing.
Again, interrupting Jack while he's talking about his friend's widow and children. And the thing is, Stephen, of all people, should know that it's actually not ridiculous. It's actually not absurd. He has a son that's around like 14 years old or something of the sort. I hate to bring his family into this, but in reality, his son has probably been inundated with the worst of Destiny clips out of context, and that's probably one of the reasons why his ideology, again, if you can call it that, he's a child at this moment in time, is so diametrically opposed to Steven. So he knows firsthand that your kids do see this stuff, and it's really unfortunate that when his kids grow up and they want to look into their dad, look into what happened when he was killed, they want to learn about him more independently, they're going to be confronted with gory video of his death, a bunch of people who are making conspiracies about where the bullet could have hit in order to re-show you the gory video. Don't think I didn't notice that online. Those people are absolutely disgusting. And then people talking about how much he deserved it. And again, you'll have people like Destiny talking about how it's sanctimonious to even care about that. But in reality, it is something that people do care about.
Okay, yeah.
God.
You can talk to your best friend.
You really are. I mean, like,
later,
you
have another
feel
30-minute conversation about it, Anna.
Maybe I will. Maybe I will talk to Glenn Beck about it. Oh, is that is that naughty? Is it
how
naughty?
many conversations have you had with Nick? You had more conversations with Nick than anyone.
So mean. Oh no, not the meanies on Twitter.
How many more lawsuits are you going to face from women that you allegedly secretly recorded during intimate moments, Destiny? I can't believe anyone takes you seriously. You're disgusting, you're embarrassing, and you should be shunned from public life with your disgusting treatment of all sorts of people, including young left-wing girls, women that you victimize allegedly. Yeah, that's who you are. You're embarrassing. You embarrass the left. You're the type of person who pushes people away from the left. Make sure you understand that. You're embarrassing. There's no morality with you. There's no grounding values. There's no principles. All you want is attention, 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 attention. That's all you want.
Of course.
All you want. Endless attention. Say disgusting, provocative garbage.
Another friendly conversation with another mainstream conservative commentator about how you're such a leftist, but those people on Twitter are so mean.
Now, he ends up getting into it with Ana even more, and he talks about how she based her whole worldview on people being mean to her on Twitter. And this is another thing that I just don't really like about Steven and the way that he approaches internet politics. He actually did this recently to Ethan, where he decided to sell him down the river because Ethan disavowed him for some other scandal that we're not even going to get into in this. Because you know what? When people are accused of crimes, that should be adjudicated in the criminal court, not online in social media. But he ended up using the same exact attacks that the far left lunatics use against Ethan as a way to get back at him because he felt personally insulted. Again, these people always go for the low blows. So in response to that, what does Ana Kasparian do? She ends up hitting him back on the recent lawsuits, which again, we're not getting into right now. And then Steven hits her back on the 9/11 truther stuff, which by the way, I made an entire hour-long video about how I don't think that is a good path for Ana Kasparian to go down. But the fact is, what's happening right here is that it's just a low blow after low blow after low blow. And at this point in time, you can see that Piers Morgan is just raking in the cash because he knows he's generating those clips, but also the conversation has completely devolved. And I feel like most of us are Jack Posobiec at this moment in time because it's just a ridiculous exchange all the way around. I mean, this is one of the most ridiculous episodes. This episode is so bad, so Springer-esque, that I actually might agree with Cornel West the most out of everybody here when he said that Piers Morgan is just interested in money, even though Cornel West was doing that as a deflection from the fact that he calls people neo-fascists. Now, to be clear, I understand the point that Steven is trying to make, as I explained earlier in this video, at least on a conceptual level. I just think it's really dumb. It's really dumb to say that you are unwilling to control your behavior, you're unwilling to control what you say, based on the idea that prominent conservatives, which eventually ended up tumbling into President Trump, won't control what he says or what they say to an extent that you're satisfied with. It's essentially a way to give yourself a free pass on whatever you do because you can always blame the other side. And like I said, that never actually progresses the ball forward. That never actually gets the temperature turned down, which is supposedly Steven's goal. And considering he's one of the most inflammatory people on this particular subject, it rings unbelievably hypocritical, even if he's intentionally trying to be inflaming in order to teach you guys a lesson about being inflaming with your rhetoric. It's not well thought out, even if you take Steven at his word, but if you don't, it sounds like a backwards justification to be as nasty as you possibly can be in order to say, well, those people over there, they're even worse, or they have even more influence, or in the case of President Trump, who's quite literally the president of the United States, he has more power, therefore, I'm consistently justified in doing so. I do think we all need to, kind of back off a little bit. We can call people out on the other side. We could acknowledge what they're actually doing, but yeah, you should not be encouraging people to lash out violently. You should not be supporting them. Again, this is something that I highlighted related to the Luigi Mangione case, which, by the way, update from the Discord messages from the alleged shooter. Apparently, he told people in his Discord chat that he isn't going to any McDonald's, so he was definitely aware of Luigi Mangione. I had speculated that the messages on the bullets were likely some kind of connection / inspiration to Luigi Mangione, but we don't know that for sure, but we do know he knows who Mangione is. And again, this all can lead to a situation where some unhinged, stupid, ridiculous, low IQ, or just a person who's upset that's whipped up into a hysteria can get to the point where they can enact violence on other people on the other side or on your side. It doesn't really matter at this point in time, all because of the fear that is being pushed by all these different various content creators. And again, a lot of these people have larger platforms than I do, but it's important for me to not use their larger platform or Steven's larger platform, his higher position of influence, as an excuse to behave poorly. Again, on top of that, I will also point out that it's a complete and total optics failure when you're ragging on Charlie Kirk's widow. Like, what is wrong with you? It makes you look bad. And I feel like at some point in time, and again, maybe, just maybe, this is me overreading the body language, Steven realized that this is actually an optical nightmare for him. Now, I know he likes the chaos. I know he likes all the controversy surrounding him to a certain degree. I mean, all of us do. That's why we do what we do, and we put our opinions out on the internet Twitter.com, but this is a bridge too far, and you feel like you could see on his face that maybe he knows that. Now, of course, finally, I do want to address something else, because Andrew Wilson has been going off on Twitter.com about an exchange that he had with Ana Kasparian prior to Cornel West leaving the show.
Ana Kasparian are here, and she's talking about this. The Young Turks called Charlie Kirk a fascist how many times? The Young Turks played into this rhetoric how much? They went out of their way to do so. Ruben recently called him out for doing it. So
I've never called him a fascist.
hang on.
I've literally never. I don't even call Trump a fascist.
I didn't interrupt you once, lady.
But you can't make things up about what I've said about Charlie Kirk.
You can talk when I'm done talking, like I was respectful enough to let you do. So the thing is like, yes, they do. This network does do that, and these leftists do that. And they set all the rhetoric up in the world to make sure something like this happened, and they were dancing on the grave of this guy before he was even cold. I have tweets from Destiny which are insane.
And then after this exchange, Andrew went on a long rant on X where he talked about how Ana Kasparian definitely did do this, and all the people that are defending her and denying this are actually simps for a left-wing woman, and he's very upset that people aren't backing him up on this particular exchange. And here's the thing. Obviously, I've been calling Ana Kasparian my literal bestie for like 2 to 3 years right now. I don't even know when she did the whole birthing person thing and people started attacking her like crazy. But to be 100% fair, Andrew Wilson is actually correct here. There's a lot of clips, a lot of incendiary rhetoric that came from Ana Kasparian in the past. I could play a ton of it for you. I could fill like an hour of a compilation of all the different crazy things that Ana specifically said, let alone Cenk Uygur. But the thing is, Ana acknowledges that she was definitely demonizing Trump supporters, the right wing, and all of these people for a huge portion of her career. She's done this in other forums, and she's working to change that. So while Andrew isn't wrong, while there are clips to support this, while I do have examples on the fly, somebody actually replied to him saying that I've made hundreds of videos on this. I'd say maybe a little bit over 100, not hundreds, but who knows? I haven't really counted as of late. In reality, Ana has acknowledged this, at least in another form, and pledged to change, and for the most part, except for certain subjects, she has backed off the very incendiary rhetoric, and you gotta give credit where credit is due. But yeah, I did want to acknowledge that Andrew Wilson, who's getting made fun of and attacked for going after Ana, was actually correct in what he was saying right there, but he didn't acknowledge that Ana has acknowledged that she used to do that before, and she's working to change. So, you know what? I'll just leave it right there. I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Destiny going a little cray-cray. Till next time.